Wow, good to be with you today. I've been feeling the energy of this and all of you for a little over the last 24 hours. And, welcome if you have only ever experienced an energy update with me on YouTube. Yeah, I'm normally outside. This is our studio where we record all of our broadcasts and everything that we do for our portal community and various other videos you may have seen over the years, and also where we record the podcast. But the reason I wanted to do my annual energy update today is, of course, because it's the solstice. And I knew for quite a while that this solstice time was going to be profound and quite I'll call it an entryway into a whole new energy. And I feel odd saying that because I feel like 2020 has been such a wallop energetically and on a human level in so many different ways. So before we dive into this broadcast a little bit, I just want to say to you that, the one thing that I have seen as a core theme this year in everybody that I know, that I work with, that I'm around, and for myself too, is the overwhelming nature of 2020. Now, perhaps you're in the minority who've really only had a good year or a year that you have seen as an up level for you in various ways. But even the people I know who can count their blessings and count the things that they're grateful for, it has been an overwhelming year on the planet. Whether it's shock, grief, loss, fear, those energies have been very strong in the collective. So even if you haven't been experiencing those yourself directly in your own life, you might be really processing that through your system. So you might be a little overwhelmed at this point in the year. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's completely normal. That's how I would expect many to be right now, and how I think that many of us have been experiencing this year. And the way to continue to navigate for yourself through your life is to, as much as you can, keep making your focus small when you feel overwhelmed. So for example, you've spent too much time hearing what's going on in the outside world from other people, or because you're on your news feed, or whatever it is. The art of practicing how to manage ourselves and bring ourselves back to center is up in our faces in an all new way. Many of us have been on this path for a long time, the path of spirituality, the path of awareness. That might be your truth too, or you might be new to it. But managing our energy, being a guardian of our own energy, and harnessing our own soul energy has never been more important on the planet. And for many years, I heard my guides, who I channel, say, oh yeah, 2020 to 2024 is going to be a complete axis point for this planet and for humanity. And you're going to go through a massive transformation, and it's going to be uncomfortable. But I didn't really understand, as you often don't, when you hear these things years away, you're like, oh, okay, 2020, sure, that makes sense. But I don't know if anybody anticipated what we've been through this year. Someone asked me the other day, they said, did you predict coronavirus? And a couple things. Number one, that's not really how it works for me. I'm not that kind of predictive psychic around the form of events. I track energy. But the one thing I do remember sharing from this very space last year was that health would be one of the major themes of this year. And so it was interesting when all of this went down, and health has been a theme. Whatever you think about coronavirus, or however it has affected you, it has been a worldwide spotlight. So I've gone through and pulled a few threads for what we've got coming up next year. I also want to channel for you. I want to channel my guides, which I don't think I did last year as far as I remember, but it felt important to let them speak a little bit about what's going on energetically, because lately they've been talking a lot about what we're going through and where we're going and how best to serve yourself, your life, the people you love. The one message they keep giving and this is a message I've been called to give time and time again this year, is create, and you are here to create. And they have always said to me for many years, the future is not set, that we are creating it in every moment, that there is a destiny of transformation that's taking place on the earth right now, but we're making it happen and we're creating it. So while I understand the feeling of disempowerment or the experience of disempowerment that we can all go through, and I know for sure a lot of people have felt disempowered or threatened by further disempowerment with everything that's been going on this year, they keep talking about how, no, this is the time. This is the time that so much in humanity will blow open, break open, and a whole new way of working and being on the planet is what we're walking into and what we're being shepherds for. So with all of that said, because I know many of you are energetically sensitive, you either work in this field, helping others through your work, or that's just your way of being in the world, I really want to invite you to, as much as you can in the next few weeks, just rest as much as you can, power down as much as you can, particularly if you're feeling a little like on the edge, a little, oh God, I can't keep up. Interestingly, this year, because of the way that Christmas is going, which is traditionally a very busy, productive, and stressful time, but also an emotionally stressful time because it brings up all kinds of emotions for people, Christmas. We're getting a very different version of Christmas this year. Even if you don't celebrate Christmas, you're affected by the collective celebration. So really choose the next few weeks to deepen with yourself and to rest and take time, because a lot of people have said to me, oh, is it going to be better next year? And I mean, number one, it's all relative, right? How we experience our life is very much based on who we are, where we are, what's going on in that moment. But I'll go back to what the Z's have talked about, that we're in a very strong energy 4-year period where major transformation is happening on the planet. And we've just kind of started. So if you find yourself, hearing me say that going, oh my God, then it's going to be really important for you to find your new balance point rather than just being in reaction to everything that's going on in the world or your own life or both. It's going to be really important for you to go, okay, what can I focus on? What would I like to focus on? Because that puts you back into that creator power and that creator energy. So welcome to this broadcast, which is bridging us from 2020 into 2021. And firstly, I would love if you have a pen and paper handy or a journal, or if you're someone who likes to type, pull up a blank page on your computer screen or grab a pen and paper. And we're just going to write just a couple things down that as we move into this broadcast, I want you to get clear about. So with your pen and paper at the ready, I want you to write down, I am grateful for receiving. I am grateful for receiving. And then I want you to write anything that you know that you received in 2020. Now that could be anything from I received a new job to I received a new level of peace and calm because I started meditating. Whatever it is, I just want you to open your mind and your awareness in this moment. What did I receive in 2020 and what am I grateful for? So the sentence is, I am grateful for receiving, and then you can do a list. And we're going to take a minute for you to do this. I am grateful for receiving. I am grateful for receiving. Okay, and you can come back to add a few things to that list later if you want. We're going to move on. The next sentence, you are going to write, I am letting go of. I am letting go of. Now, I would use this as an intentional letting go. Now, you might be in the grief process right now. There might be someone or something that you are letting go of, and you might want to add that if it feels good to say, I'm letting go of this, just to encourage you to continue to recognize you're moving through. You're moving through the process of letting go on some level. But more importantly, I want you to think of this sentence intentionally. So as you go into 2021, what would you like to let go of in your life? It may be a thing, a place, a person, but more often than not, these are states or ways of being. I am letting go of my procrastination when it comes to the things I want to create, for example. So I am letting go of, and you write a few things that you would like to let go of as you move into 2021. Good. And we're going to do one last thing. You're now going to write, what does my soul want to tell me today? What does my soul want to tell me today? What does my soul want to tell me today? And now I want you to write whatever you hear from your higher voice, from your guides, from the voice of your soul. And if you're sitting there going, I've never done this, how do I? Just let your imagination be the voice. Let the voice come through. What does my soul want to tell me today? And just allow yourself to listen for words and then write the words. Or the words may be writing as you are hearing them. What does my soul want to tell me today? Okay. So we'll take about 1 more minute for you to do this. What does my soul want to tell me today? So our 3 sentences that we started this exercise with were, I am grateful for receiving. That's us focusing on our gratitude. And you've hopefully written at least one thing that you know you received in 2020. A person, a place, a thing, or a state or a way of being. And then you wrote, I am letting go of, as we move into the new year, I am letting go of person, place, thing, pattern. And that's an intention. So we state what we're grateful for, then we intend, and then to top it off, the icing on the cake, what does my soul want to tell me today? Now, when I began channeling 22 years ago, 22 years ago, I never imagined it would happen to me. And I heard the voice of my guides, who I will be channeling shortly in this broadcast, so that you can have a message from the Z's, which is what I call them. They gave me the name, they said, well, I'm the lead spokesperson and my name is Zachary. And then a few years later, I met other members of the group, Zafariah, Zayadora. So the people who back then were following my messages, they started referring to them as the Z's, and that's how it stuck. Well, one of the things I've learned is that whether or not you believe you can channel a guide, or you have a guide, or you have an angel, or however you want to frame it for yourself, or however you experience it, we can all speak to our higher self. We can all speak to the voice of our soul, which is just a little above us. And that conversation is very potent. It resets you and it reconnects you with your truth, which is you are both human and soul. We're all a human and a soul. So our soul pours into this human body, and in this human body we have ancestry, both from our immediate genetic family, but also from the collective and everything the collective has been through. So this body I'm in and the body that you're in right now, we're wearing 2020 bodies, meaning that's the period of history that these bodies have got used to with the line of all the humans that have gone before us. But then the soul is cosmic. The soul belongs to the universe, it belongs to consciousness, it belongs to light. And we pour ourselves into these bodies to have these experiences. So when we live as both human and soul, we have a fuller experience of life. We have more of an ability to perceive, create, and sense. And the reason I'm bringing this up for all of you now is those 3 sentences we just did. I'm grateful for receiving this. I am letting go of this. And what does my soul want to tell me today? You can answer all 3 of those in about 5 to 8 minutes. And that can be the perfect reset for you if you are one of those people that I was speaking to at the very beginning of this broadcast, where you're like, oh my God, I don't know how to reset myself. So we can all find the things that work for us, whether it's dance, meditation, gardening, cooking, whatever the thing is that you know is your, what I call the channeled place, the place where you just go into the flow state and it's what you're here to do and it's what you're here to bring. But having a conversation with the voice of our soul has never been more important, because what's really going on the earth right now, and the Z's will probably allude to this a little more, is the rise of the human soul and the end of human constriction, which is why we're seeing such a battle going on right now. The Z's spoke many years ago about how certain limitations were in place in the human collective as to who we could be and how far we could go, but that we're here at a period in history where a lot of that is breaking down, and humans are becoming more magnified, more conscious, more awake. Now, I used to think, oh, that sounds lovely, but it's actually quite a messy process, and it's uncomfortable, and it brings up all kinds of stuff when you're going through that, bringing your soul back into your body, which is something that children have quite intact. Unless they're heavily damaged young, most children will keep their soul light, their soul essence intact. Normally can be as late as 7 or 8 before they get more integrated into collective society. And that happened to all of us, unless you were very lucky and held in a very conscious place. But then you too will be dealing with that energy I'm talking about in the mass consciousness. So all of us are at slightly different places, but we're birthing a new us while we are also birthing a new world. That's kind of the bigger grand scheme of what's going on here. And that's how we connect back to that grander energy, by having a conversation with our soul self. And you can do this every day. You could start every morning by writing, what does my soul want to tell me today? And I don't know if you experience this, but it's very common to cry or have an emotional reaction when you read those words back. This is why it's so important to write them down. Because when you bring it down through the body, write it on a piece of paper or a computer screen, you get to read back those words. So your soul and the words of your soul have a powerful effect on who you are as a human. When you take them in, when you take them in your heart, it rewires your mind, your way of thinking. It reinfuses you, it fills you back up. So this is a really easy reset that you can do any day. So I want you to keep this piece of paper handy to remember that this is something you can do. It's why I say everyone can channel. Everyone is channeling more than they perhaps realize. You know, we're channeling the aspect of our personality that we learned from our mother or our father or our friend. But when you tap into spirit like this, and when you tap into your soul essence, the most extraordinary things can happen. And it's a really powerful remedy to some of the density on earth that we have been witness to, privy to, in and out of this year. So by all means, if you're someone who is a freedom fighter, or you know, someone who is a social activist, or that's your role, that's your mission, by all means, you know, be where you need to be. And you might be someone who is designed to lift the density, talk to the density, really get in there and try and help lift or move the consciousness of some of the more dense energy or systems on the planet. But you will still need to reset yourself. You will still need to come back to that higher frequency. And the way that we can do that is to tap into our soul self with some regularity. So you weren't expecting me to make you do a bunch of stuff, were you? You thought you were coming here to just have me do all the talking, which I will. Don't worry, that's my job. That's what I'm here for. But actually, you know, I'm not really doing all the talking. My job is really to listen and to repeat kind of what I hear and what is in this conversation that we're all having. So I offer you that because I know how intense these times are. I also know that having 3 hours to reset yourself is just not practical for most of us. It's not necessarily the kind of time we have created in our lives or what we've got going on. But taking 5 or 10 minutes, what does my soul want to tell me today? If you have that conversation with yourself every day, it will be a game changer. It will be incredible. It will calibrate you more to your own inner sense of love. It will calibrate you more to your own higher mind, and it will support you as you are shaking off the old in yourself and as we're shaking it off globally and collectively. Because boy, oh boy, there has never been more of an identity shift year on the planet in all the time I've been alive. I've not witnessed such a collective identity shift / crisis as I have seen this year. So I wrote some notes. I wasn't sure how much I was going to rely on them, but at this point I'm called to just share a couple things with you. So at the end of 2017, I noticed that I'd done a lot of live work, that work as well as my video work. And whenever I was called to channel for a group on stage, wherever I was in the world, they kept saying, "You are needed and now is your time." And this theme came up over and over again. You are needed and now is your time. That's you I'm talking to, by the way, just in case there's any confusion. We are all needed and now is our time. And at the time, I remember working with and meeting a reasonable number of light workers or people who were very spiritual, who were like, "Oh God, I'm on the wrong planet. Why am I here? I don't want to be here." You know, and I could empathize. I'd had my moments like that myself. But what they started to say is they were like, no, the time is now. And now you're going to see things get more real. It's not that they were saying that things weren't real before 2018, but it was kind of like a call to arms. And I noticed for myself, and I noticed in lots of people around me, including many of you who are here in this community or the portal, or just from comments I was seeing around, more and more people felt ready to show up, to serve, and to be here as part of the bridge generation that we are. We're here to bridge. We're here to go from the older density to the newer level of consciousness. And you might be highly aware of that, and you might be sitting there going, "I don't know what he's talking about. I don't know what bridge." And that's fine. It doesn't, we don't all have to understand it the same way, and we won't all relate to the same interpretation of it. But that's the one thing that they really wanted to get across. They said things are about to get very real, and a whole group of you are going to step up. And in stepping up, you will have a very fulfilled and connected life, even if there are challenges around you, for you, or for some of the people that you're closely connected to. So I think all of us can attest that being a human is not without its challenges. Being human on the planet in this time, I think all of us have our version of what challenges are for us and what they look like and what they feel like. And they always relate to our lessons. Like they relate to not only our genetic history with whatever we're working out with our family and the collective at large, but also what we as a soul elected to come here and do. So for you, one of your great soul lessons might be patience, which would probably mean that everything that you're trying to make work isn't working for a period of time until you get to more of a place of acceptance, surrender, and patience, until the circumstances wear you down enough that you go, what if I saw this differently and I didn't just try and push against it all the time? So, patience is a very general lesson, but you may also have a lesson that's a little more focused than that. Your lesson might be around power, which means you're born into a family who haven't necessarily held a powerful position in their group or in their life, but all of a sudden you're hoisted into this very powerful position in the company you work for, in what you represent in the world. Maybe you're working on behalf of community members who really depend on you and really look to you for leadership. So your power lessons will show up through that journey that you take. So back to my original point, you are needed and now is your time. That was coming to me this morning as I was here preparing for all of you. It's like, oh, this started 2 years ago, where they really wanted, well, almost 3 years ago now, where they really wanted us to get, we are needed and now is our time. And then a year ago, we held a Soul Magic event in Costa Rica, and it was November of 2019, and there was a real seriousness about the planet and about what was about to happen. Not the planet, the health of the planet exactly, but just where we're at right now, our relationship to the planet, most importantly, our relationship to each other as human beings, and how in flux and how fragile it is. And I say that in both sides of the word fragile, both the possibility of reinvention that is available, as much as the fragility of some of the morals and the ways of relating to each other. It's very 50-50. I know some people only want to look at it in a bad way. They've always steered me away from that. They've always said, no, there's a bigger picture at work here. And if you only look through the lens in one way, you will only see the picture in one angle. And there are many angles and many possibilities. So with the seriousness of some of the themes that we were looking at last year, I remember thinking, wow, this, things feel really like kind of stuff's getting real. And then this year, of course, that's really what we've seen, because more people than ever are waking up. And what I wrote on the board up here is, I think many have had an experience this year of waking up in a movie that they don't recognize. Like, what is this? Even my mom yesterday said to her, I feel like I'm living in a bad film. And we lost my father at the end of April. So, that's been moving through my family, the grief process and all of that stuff. And especially, of course, my mom, who was with him for 50 odd years of her life. So one of the things I wrote here is this: waking up in a movie you didn't realize you were in. Some of you have been delighted that your friends and your family are beginning to look around at the world and question things that you've known for years, things that you've thought were a little off for a long time. So I want to get into that a little bit. One of the things that I wrote here on the board, worldwide wake up to the human shadow. One of the themes of this year has been a worldwide wake up to the human shadow, not a virus, but the human shadow. The virus is, a trigger event, and it's a point of focus, and it's, a communal experience. But the worldwide wake up to the human shadow. And that is something that you will have experienced globally and collectively. You'll look at things that you're seeing out there in the world and you're like, whoa, that looks pretty ugly. That's pretty dark. Wow, where's the heart in that person? This doesn't look good. But equally, you'll notice that in yourself. you'll notice you too are shedding darkness in resonance to this shedding that is going on the planet. So none of us can escape what we individually go through whenever there is a collective cleanse. Someone said to me a few weeks ago, they said, why is it so much darker on the planet? And I said, well, the thing that the Z's have explained to me is that it's also so much lighter. They talked about how the darkness that we're now seeing, that is surfacing, that is more apparent to more people, has always been here. But it has been more dormant and more buried. And we have been a little more asleep at the wheel to the way that we've been interacting with it. So that's another reason that this time is quite uncomfortable. And you need to know on a personal level how to balance your exposure to the dark. Are you someone who thrives on investigating, uncovering, and calling out the darkness in the world? And thankfully, there are people who are built like that. You know, that's your design. It's kind of who you are. It's what you're here for. It's your mission. So it kind of lights you up, which is brilliant. But equally, you might be somebody who doesn't want to bury your head in the sand, but you recognize that your nervous system and your way of focusing and staying open, balanced, and here as a creative life force doesn't do well if you overly expose yourself only to the darkness, if you are not giving yourself a balanced diet. And, you know, one thing you can look at as one of the, if you like, influences that we have to that collectively is the news. You know, how many news stories are positive or are celebratory. If you actually look at the frequency of the news, so much of it is fear-based, concern-based, worry-based. And so what it's transmitting is keeping us, because even if you aren't looking at the news, you know, if a lot of people in the collective are, that frequency is going through their bodies. So then when you're interacting with them, it goes through yours too. Those lower levels of frequency are not just in the news. I mean, they're everywhere in our society. But part of the worldwide wake up that we've had this year is people are beginning to see that a bit more. And they're having more visceral reactions to it. So you might have a friend who's like, oh my God, have you seen this? And that's a good thing in a way. But also then they're going to have to go through the emotional cycle that accompanies that. The grief, the shock, the fear, the emotional purge that takes place as you wake up to the shadow on the planet. And it's interesting because one of the things that accompanies enlightenment or awakening experiences always is shock, loss, grief, horror. What is quite common for people is to have an awakening that lasts weeks or months, and then things either go wrong or the bottom drops out of their world, or they look at darkness and shadow in a deeper way than ever before so they can transmute it. So on a collective level, that's kind of where we're at. We're at the beginning of the purge of the shadow. And the Z's often say, you know, this is going to go on for a few years. So if you're hearing that and thinking, oh my God, just know you will develop muscles for it. You will develop a way to remain open to yourself, to your mission, to why you're here, to the people that you love. And you'll also find ways to boundary how much it's good for you to expose yourself to that. Remember, we're feeling beings first. So the biggest thing you can trust in yourself is how you feel. So if you're watching something, just check in. How am I feeling? Oh, I thought I wanted to watch this, but I'm not feeling as good as I was before I started watching it. Or, you know, you're talking to a friend and all of a sudden you notice something's off. Just start to pay attention to how you feel, because our sensitivity is on the rise. And that is across the board. It's not just your feelings. More people are becoming sensitive to toxins. It's a worldwide thing. But the area I want you to focus on is how you feel when you expose yourself to things, because if you can maintain your relationship to your inner feelings at this time, it's where the power of your soul lies. It's where the power of your soul can be housed. And consciousness is rising on the planet, which means we can imbibe more of it. Again, sounds more fun than it often is, because you've also got to purge out what you don't need to create space to let that in. But if you can start to live a little more through that principle, all of us, me included, what you're going to do is create a little more space between where you are connected to your life right now and some of the kind of bad parts of the movie that we're in right now. You know, some of the stuff that you're like, ooh, this is a very dark scene. Ooh, that's an actor I don't like watching. We are in a movie as human beings, which is very convincing. You know, I get very convinced by the movie when things, you know, recently I've found myself getting more irritated than usual with things that have gone wrong. And we've had a lot of complications over the last couple of months, just because we've moved house and various things. But it's not that the problems are like major problems, but what I've noticed in myself is bigger emotion. And what I've realized as I've noticed that is I'm like, oh, that's interesting. It doesn't last very long. True emotion doesn't last very long. It kind of burns through. But I've realized it's my discomfort with the change, and it's my own reaction to some of the stressors on the planet, which are far more global in nature than my mind might be interpreting in that moment. I'm like, oh, is this really about that thing that just happened? Or is this just me kind of shedding some of this stuff as I need to, as we all are? Let's take a breath. We are creating the future and shedding the past. We are creating the future and shedding the past simultaneously. And it's fast. I mean, that's why it feels like a roller coaster sometimes. And some days you're like, oh, I just want to go to sleep now and start tomorrow again. And part of it might look like what's going on in the outside world, but what's going on in the outside world mirrors what's happening in consciousness in the collective. So the next theme I want to just come to for 2020, and it surprised me, was chaos. And then in brackets, I wrote internal. So internal chaos that has come through the outside order. The restrictions, the ordering, the stopping of all the things that we used to do, the places that we ran our momentum, the places we used to relate. So as you put a very quick, sudden stop to all of that with no warning for people, what happens is when the initial response to that wears off, you go into a kind of inner chaos. So that's why I talked about worldwide identity crisis. You not necessarily knowing who you are anymore or what's going on or what the world is. And as much as that's uncomfortable to us as humans, that is quite necessary for where we're going. Because if we are going to purge some of the old system in order to rebuild a new one, we have to go through that process. But I want you to focus on the first part of the sentence with me. We are creating the future. I had a lot of people in my life very panicked about what was going on this year. I had my own moments too, when I kind of, you look at some of the stuff going on. And every time I speak to them, they say a couple of things that are very interesting. And they have said stuff like this to me for 12 years. Whenever I've noticed something in the world, they've always kind of been able to help me see the bigger picture. One thing I want to bring up, because there's been a very strong conversation among spiritual people and light workers about, what's going on in the world and what's the agenda and all of that. The one thing that the Z's have often said is there are many agendas at work. So if you're just focused on one and you're speaking about it like it's going to come true, you're missing the point. Because every agenda is alive. So if I had an agenda around you, let's say we're sat at coffee and I've decided I'm going to get you to say yes to come to my Christmas party, even though I know you normally would say no because you don't like parties, you don't like going to places where there's more than 2 people. But I've got an agenda in my head. I'm going to get you to that party. I can do everything in my power, all kinds of stuff to kind of manipulate and try and make that happen. But unless your soul is also signing up for it and is also a match to the consciousness of it, it isn't going to work. And the one thing that they've talked about that you have to be very careful of, they said that visionaries and creatives have a very strong tapped-in ability, and anybody can be a visionary and a creative, by the way. You don't have to be a creative person as your job. You just have to be open, and your vision has to be open, and your understanding of manifestation has to be open. They said if you get enough people to focus on an outcome and think that it's going to happen, you will help make that outcome come true. You will help bring that into realization. So if we were all told a story that was about what was going on the planet, and we all start focusing on it, and especially if we start fearing it, especially if we all just go into a small contracted place, we have the potential to help manifest it because we're focusing on it so much. Now, this is a tricky topic because I'm also with you. I'm not Mr. Bury my head in the sand. I like to look at all the stuff that's going on. I like to kind of see certain things, but I also recognize that energetically certain things can make me sick, and not in a way that is me in grief or shock or reaction to some of the more, the darker agendas, if you like, but it can get into my system. And then when it is in my system, I will start speaking about it as if it is reality, or I will start seeing that as reality. So I don't mean to paint a very, I don't know what the word would be. I guess what I will say is we have to be very mindful of what we let in. And the only way we really know what we've let in is if we pay attention to how we're responding and then what actions we're taking. So again, there will be those of you on this broadcast who are here for that fight. Your mission is to go in and sort some of that stuff out, and that's fantastic. But there will also be others of you who might be very aware of that, but you might recognize, no, my role is to do something else. I'm going to pay attention. I'm going to support where I can, but I'm also here to birth the new. And the reason I bring this up is I've met many people who are in a bit of crisis about that, like judging themselves or worried that they're not doing the right thing, but also confused because they keep hearing about these agendas that change, or different people say different things. There's a lot of chaos in the world right now, and there's a lot of chaos in people's beliefs, people's perceptions, and people can get hijacked as well. So I'm not saying that because it's important for us to focus on, oh, they got hijacked, oh, she got hijacked, oh, look at that person over there. That's a waste of your energy. What you have to ask yourself is, have I been hijacked? Yeah, I'm a little bit overwhelmed. The world's a bit chaotic. We've got some stuff going on in my family, but I can actually come back to myself with regularity. I actually am able to do that. So I know I'm kind of okay. I'm about where 2020 would put me. Or, no, I've been a mess for weeks. Then you need to look at what you're doing. Then you need to look at how can you support yourself, or how can you get others to support you more? What are you exposing yourself to? What are you imbibing? Who are you imbibing? It's very important. I say it not to be shadowy or paint a scary picture, quite the opposite. This is how we retain our sovereignty, and this is how we retain our power. And we're all here. We're all on the planet at the same time. So if any of that stuff is going on, you'll know about it, you'll feel it, or it will be something that someone else is looking into or dealing with. So I've noticed a lot of, because of the fear, a lot of people not quite sure where to turn, who to believe. The way to come back to yourself in all of it is to remember, we're here in the human body for now. We may be here for another 40, 50 years. We may be here for another year. None of us truly know when we're going to exit. But unfortunately, we aren't taught to live that way. And that disables us. It puts us very much into the human life and we forget that we're a soul and we're a spirit, and that this soul has a job to do for as long as we're alive. And then when we're no longer alive in the human body, our job changes. We're no longer here in this energy. And it can be very helpful to come back to that truth of life whenever you're projecting too far into the future or getting lost in worry about what might happen. I've met many people over the years who've predicted certain things that were going to go down on certain dates. I mean, for the last 15 years, I've been hearing that. It started for me in about 2006. And the more of those things you go through, you realize a lot of fear and energy gets wasted focusing on those kinds of things. So come back to today as much as you can if you find you're getting overwhelmed with all of the chaos outside. But also recognize that the chaos is very psychic and very active at the moment because a lot isn't being moved through the body the way that it used to be. People used to go places, do things, move around the world. So all of a sudden, a lot of the psychic chaos in the world is because people are a lot more still than they were, and they haven't necessarily landed and grounded in their body. We should see that get a little more settled over the next few months. Doesn't mean people have to like the situation that we're in right now. Doesn't mean you're not wishing that you could, whether it's get on a plane and go somewhere or get in your car and drive to see someone, whatever it is. But people are getting a little more adjusted to it. And come February of 2021, you will feel a little clearer about what you can do next and what you want to do next with your life, which brings me back to the creative part. So a couple of other things I just want to touch on for 2020 before we go into 2021, and then I'm going to channel. Internal strength is growing in people as a result of everything. So that also relates to internal strength of spirit. We talked about that at the very beginning. The exercise. What does my soul want to tell me today? What am I grateful for? What am I receiving this year? What am I letting go of this year? Very good to kind of just check in with yourself about those practices, especially when life gets distracting. It's important to come back to how aligned am I with what I'm doing next? And am I spiritually alive in my life? Is my soul allowed into my life, or have I pushed my soul out? So this internal strength and this strength of spirit is on the rise, and many of you will already feel it. And then the last thing I wrote for 2020, human control, and then in brackets, it will backfire. Human control, it will backfire. And I speak about this globally and collective. There are certain factions that are making attempts to control groups, large groups right now. And we may see that playing out for another year or two. That might keep rearing its head. But the it will backfire piece, and they've always said this, they've said there's a lot that's going wrong behind the scenes. So when people get scared about those pictures, they forget that there are other people involved in those, shall we say, control agendas that aren't all necessarily playing by the rules either, and they're all being affected by this rising consciousness too. So it, again, doesn't mean bury your head in the sand, doesn't mean say, oh yeah, sure, I'll do that. Really important that everybody is looking at that right now. Everybody is going, hang on a second, what's going on? Or they said what? Really important, because that is what catalyzes the change. But where I'm reminded that the human control will backfire, it's important to remember that this is a transitionary period and that we're not moving into a new normal. And equally, human control shows up for us personally. Where are we no longer able to control aspects of our own life or our own personality, or let go of parts of who we were so that more of who we're supposed to be can come through? So think about your own relationship to human control this year and how you've had to let go of some of the things you perhaps used to be able to control in order to allow a new level of strength and strength of spirit in. And the payoff for that will come more next year. For many of you, it won't even have fully landed right now, even if you're feeling good, even if you're like, actually, I feel like I've come a long way this year, despite the circumstances. You're going to see from February onwards, there will be even more of a landing for that. Because the energy of today that we're doing this broadcast, 21st, and tomorrow, 22nd, it is a gateway energetically, and on a planetary level, it's a window that we're passing through. This is also why it's a good day to kind of shed and intend and vision. Kind of keeps you alive as we go through that window and keeps you connected to the energy. So human control, and remembering that human control is not going to do very well in the new consciousness on Earth, certainly not in the years to come. So whatever things you see right now in individuals in your life, because you'll see it playing out in a very local, personal way, as well as in a global way, it's going to be messy. And knowing that can help. Knowing that it's not necessarily going to be as graceful or as peaceful as you would like it, because control comes from scarcity, comes from fear, and comes from a feeling of inadequacy and that you don't have enough, or that you aren't able to survive. So control is an energy of fight. And we all have experienced it in ourselves, in relationships to smaller or larger degrees. But the energy of human control is old consciousness. And where we're going with new consciousness, humans have to be in relationship to the earth, to each other, to the universe. We can't keep going the way we've been going with the old ancestral human control. But it is why you might have, in the last few years, looked at things in the world and gone, wow, this feels a little bit 1940s, or this feels a little bit kind of barbaric. There have been echoes and healings going on a planetary level, but it's really important you add your voice. Being a passive observer to it all won't feel good to most of you. At the very least, you will need to say something, either in a conversation with a group of friends who seem to be thinking it's all okay, or there might be actions that you can take to help change the future. And that's really important, our voice and our ability to create change. I'm going to keep coming back to that, because next year, that's really the energy that is coming online in a big way. You are a creative force on Earth. You are a creative life force. You are here to create, and the time is now to create the new. And you might say, well, how do I do that when I'm stuck in my house? But actually, remember that every one of us who has been born through the body, we were in a 9-month gestation period. So we were in a 9-month gestation period before we came out. And then we came out, and unless you were born earlier than that, and, we kind of took some time to find our way in the world. So the energy of the future is here today. Let's tap into that for a second. Just take a moment to feel your body and your heart and your energy in 2025. So you might find closing your eyes helps for this. Just imagine yourself in 2025. Notice how you feel. Notice if any parts of your body feel different. Notice if your physical body feels like it's different in 2025 as you're trying this vision on for size. Notice how your energy feels, particularly the energy of your heart. Most of you will feel that your heart is a little more present in 2025. A little more landed. And that's because the energy of the heart in the world is at work in an expansive way right now. It's taking its time, sure, and again, it's an up-down process, but now you can let go of 2025. Okay, so you see, we can tap into the future at any point, and we are creating the next 4 or 5 years right now. So 2021 onwards, creative life force. Creative life force. If you aren't already having this, eruptions of creative vision and energy are going to be happening for more and more of you. You're going to be having visions and ideas. And remember, your first vision isn't often the one to put all your energy behind. It might be, but what happens with visions is we usually get pieces of it at a time. So in January, you might suddenly go, oh my God, I'm going to move country and I think it might be over here. But then in February, someone suggests, hey, do you want to just move 4 hours away? And you're like, oh, well, I wasn't really thinking about that, but let me go and explore it. And you go and explore it, and there's something about it you like, and you're like, oh, it could be easier than moving country. So our vision slowly lets us try on for size and calibrate to how it wants to land on the earth. It's why writing your visions down is really important, because again, you bring it down from the ethers, you write it down or you type it on the screen, and then you let your human self take it in and you see how it changes you, you see how it affects you. So this is how we as creative visionaries have to work. We are worker bees. You know, you work to make creativity happen. The vision feels very ephemeral, but the energy that then comes through you and what you create in the world changes your life. I mean, any of you who are parents can attest to that. You created a child or children, and look at how they have radically changed your life, not just because of who they are as souls and what they came into your world to be, but how they changed you. Because all of a sudden you're a guardian and you're, you know, responsible in a different way, and you're receiving in a different way, and probably your heart is more open because of your bond and your devotion to this child. So, you know, they began as just a spark in you, yet their entrance onto the planet changed everything. And that's how we work as creative visionaries. We birth these things onto the planet, and what you will find is more and more of you will be having creative visions and an impulse to create different things. And remember, creation is sometimes really small. It doesn't have to be like a big thing. And especially right now with more and more people at home, your creations might be quite small, manageable, doable things. But that energy is asking to birth forth, because we are going to be shaping, creating the new world as a collective, as a tribe over the years to come. So sometimes I'll be on the receiving end of what someone's creating, and I'll be taking that in and adjusting to it and benefiting from it and calibrating to it. And other times I'll be creating something and putting it out into the world, or my relationships, or that's how it works. We're all doing it together. So that is the biggest message for 2021, which again seems kind of ironic that I'm saying, oh, creating creative visions again, while so many people have been asked to stay at home. But you know, I can't, my logical mind can't interfere with these messages. I have to trust them. But eruptions of creative vision and energy, your creations and what you create is needed, because as much as you need to create new energy in the world, other people need to experience it. Okay. Old relationship patterns and identities are leaving at a worldwide level. And this came up for 2021, which I thought was funny, because I know that's been a theme this year. Old relationship patterns and identities are leaving at a worldwide level. This is probably why many of you have gone through some massive healings this year with people in your circle, people in your life, memories of older relationships you've had, different positions you're moving to in the way that you see things that have happened in the past. Perhaps it's easier to be more compassionate. Perhaps it's easier to let go and feel unencumbered by the past. But this is happening energetically. It's just kind of being pulled out of us. So when it's happening like that at a worldwide level, and I think of things like the Me Too movement, I think of how much trauma was catalyzed around heartlessness in the last 4 years politically. I see that happening on a worldwide level, but
I really focus on how it will be showing up for you individually. You'll be upgrading, shifting, changing. So old relationship patterns and identities are leaving at a worldwide level. So being aware of that and being mindful that that's why certain people might be a bit more sensitive or a bit more emotional, or you. And it can be very amorphous. It doesn't necessarily follow a pattern that you yourself set an intention to heal your relationships. You might be going about your business and all of a sudden one day you're just supremely emotional about a memory or a thought, and it seems odd to you. But again, like I said earlier, these emotions are coming out of us because the emotions are connected to old energy. Whenever they're moving, whenever they're leaving, they're connected to old energy. And I don't say that in a bad way. I mean, it's beautiful when you cry, or it's a wonderful release. It's an expression. It's not to be judged. But the old is leaving. And so a lot of you will have used the opportunity to fast track yourself through healing this year. And that opportunity is still available next year if you want to keep going. Or if you don't feel that's really been your year, really focusing on what you want to heal in your life in 2021 is going to be big. Remember that people are quick to go to fear when they are disoriented. When people are disoriented, confused, when they don't quite know who they are or where they are or what they are or what's going on in the world, they're easy to fear. They're easy to go into fear. So try your best to help the people around you in whatever way feels right to balance their fear, because fear is tricky. You know, fear is the emotion that can make people do things that they either regret or could come to regret. And when we as a collective are manipulated into fear and we are asked to only fear, we will lose our sovereignty, we will lose our power, we will lose who we are, we will lose our ability to create. So there might be people in your life that you notice are quite in fear, and helping them in whatever way you can to help them get through it, help them get out of it. Again, don't do it if you're exhausted, if you're burnt out, if you don't have a good feeling about it. Trust that someone else will come along. But sometimes it can just be a few sentences, or just rubbing someone's back, or whatever it is. You might have noticed already, I'm sure you have this year, that fear got very high on the planet around the end of March, beginning of April. Hasn't completely gone away, still rears up. You see it in some poor people's eyes when you're out. Even with the masks that people are wearing, you can see the fear in certain people. It's really important to, as much as you can, not get caught in that contagion, because the virus of fear is something we do need to be aware of. But also, what can I do to counterbalance that, or to bring something else? Have I got the energy, the capacity to bring something else? Not to fight their fear, not to try and drag them out of it, but just to emit something else. Maybe I can smile at them. Maybe I can do something. So just be aware of that, because it's there. And people are quick to go to fear when they feel out of their depth or disoriented. 2021, the birthing of new systems, business, and enterprise. The birthing of new systems, business, and enterprise. Some of you are going to be very involved in this. Some of it's going to look very left field, and that's good. Even if it's not the way that you're doing business in 2 or 3 years, don't worry too much about 10-year plans when you're thinking about setting something up right now. Think of the next 2 to 3 years, because a lot of the transitionary energy of this next 2 to 3 years is going to lead us to some of the more solidity that we can get into from 2024 onwards. So don't see it as a bad thing if you can only vision something for a couple of years. We're in a very transitory time, but we are going to see in 2021 the birthing of new systems, business, and enterprise. Now, this one's important, and will be important for any of you who've been tracking some of the more agenda-based stuff. Leadership at the corporate and governmental levels are also very much in flux. They're very much in flux. That was interesting to me, because I think often, certainly I know I've done this, and I think we can all be guilty of it. people speak about a corporation or a government or a system of leadership, and they tend to see them as one thing, which isn't actually true, isn't actually correct, because there will be a lot of non-alignment in those organizations. Sure, if you're in one of those organizations and the organization is moving forward, then you're in enough of a position to not topple it. But this is something they've talked about for years. They've said there's a lot going on inside those systems that isn't good. And I'm talking about how the people who are in those positions are feeling, what they're going through, and how in flux those systems are. So again, it goes back to, don't make a decision about the future or about what you think is happening that's all based on your projection or your conjecture. Very important to keep an open mind and to see what's possible to create. It's one of the most important things we have to do at the moment. We have to stay open to possibilities that the creation of a brighter future is possible. Doesn't mean we aren't dealing with darkness right now or problems, but it does mean that you have to kind of keep that higher mind, that cosmic connection open. Those who are working in corporate or government positions right now, there's a lot of flux in those systems. There's a lot of chaos in those systems. There's a lot of, I don't want to use the word infighting because that's too dramatic, but shall we just say the consciousness is quite divided in there and is more split than it may appear to be from the outside. So again, these rising levels of consciousness on the planet are rocking the boat in those places too. It's not them versus us, as is often portrayed. Everybody on the planet, if you're in a human body, you are going through this consciousness wave, and you can't be unaffected by it. So that's a good thing to just kind of keep in mind. Okay, I think I'm at the end of everything I wanted to say. Ah, goodness. That's an hour and 8 minutes. You know what I did forget to tell you all? Those of you who tuned in at the very beginning and you were waiting for the broadcast, we were playing you some music. I forgot to mention this, but the last song was a song called All Who Walk the Earth, Remember. And this is a time we're remembering who we are as souls. And the album we released on November the 20th, I created it with my brother from another cosmic mother, Devor Bozic, and we put it out on November 20th. It's called Awaken, and you can stream it everywhere. You can download it, get a CD or a vinyl, but it's transformational music, and we tuned it to 528 hertz. So there is a healing vibration in all of the songs. So if you want to check that out, go to awakenalbum.com. It's there now. But yeah, All Who Walk the Earth, Remember is a song that we consciously chose to play right before we started, because that's what we're here for. We're here to remember the greater mission of this transformational time. And sure, we're also here to grow and go through the sometimes very painful, very difficult human lessons we go through. But the only reason any of you are tuned into this broadcast is because you remember or have contact with your soul. And it is our souls and the level of consciousness that our souls are now being able to hold in the human body, which is new at the collective level, that we're walking forward with together. So with that said, I'm going to channel the Z's, my guides. After some electrolytes. Wow, we have a lot of you here. There are almost 8,000 of you here live, which blows our minds. I think 20,000 of you signed up for this, so a lot of you will be there on the replay. Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in today. It's an auspicious day for us to get together and cast some good energy into our futures. Okay. Good. Welcome. Creator power.
that is what you are holding here, this tribal gathering that you are having. And of course, while there are a certain designated number of you who have joined for this transmission that we are in with you, there are, of course, far more of you beyond that number, for you are also deeply connected to incredible numbers of human beings and soul beings on the planet. So in that sense, this event today, this gathering, this focal point of energy that you are all in, is being mirrored across the globe by many such groups. And whenever you do this, whenever you come together as a group, you raise your frequency and raise the consciousness. And when you raise your frequency or raise the consciousness, what you actually increase are the possibilities of what you can create, what can be informed on the earth. But we will caution this. There is often an idea that higher and faster is better. But what we will tell you, and we have mentioned this in many of our conversations with you over the recent years, there is a reason that the consciousness is rising slower than some of you might like it to. It would be very destructive for many of your systems, many of your people, if overnight the level of consciousness suddenly shot up. So this year has been what we will call a 3 steps backwards in order to get a 7 steps forward dance. Meaning, energetically, many of you have experienced the contraction of the collective or your personal selves at times, if not all of the time, in order to propel yourselves forward and out of the amnesia of existence that human patterning and human life was designed to be. For all of you as souls have an extraordinary power of consciousness that can influence and vastly change life on this planet. But first, the stranglehold or the gravity belt that humanity has been enslaved by for thousands and thousands of years has to break, has to melt. And it was always going to be that this was the period of time, the period of your Earth history, that was possible, which is why, of course, you also see a small number of factions. They are far smaller in number than your fear-based mind would have you believe, trying to control. It is very important that they are seen as many in number, or that you fear their number, their power, their level of money, their level of influence, their level of control. For if you fear enough of those things, you will allow them to manifest what it is they would like to manifest. But as Lee has correctly advised, they too are in flux right now, for the levels of consciousness that they are experiencing are causing great unpredictability in their worlds as well. So while we understand that some of you are here to, or what you might call, fight that good fight, and we don't want to dismiss your mission, we are here not so much to point your focus over there, but instead to draw your focus back into you, because you are the superpower that this world needs. Every single individual on the planet is a potential superpower. So you all have a scale inside you which you can move up or down in terms of your frequency. So if you are sick, your light, your soul power level will be a little dimmer than if you are vibrant, alive, and healthy. However, we must add a caveat here. There are many who have done extraordinary things when they are sick that have greatly impacted the planet. So it is not to say one is better than the other, but we will tell you that one of the reasons that human health is under the focus this year is not so much because of this COVID that gets spoken about so often and in interesting ways, but instead because the health of your planet and the health of your human systems needs an overhaul going forward. The level of toxicity and the electromagnetic energy on your planet is not easily sustainable, not just for the human body, but for the Earth itself. So you are going to see more global conversation and innovation around cleaning up the planet over the next decade or so. And that is going on now. So even those of you who think that there is not enough focus on that right now, do not worry about what you are not seeing. Focus your energy on what you are seeing, because that will help it amplify. Just as Lee advised against
spending all of your time worrying about what might be the worst case scenario and actually feeding it energy. Instead, as the great quote goes, be the change you wish to see in the world, and understand that you are magnetic beings, which means as you focus your energy, your attention, your eyes, your light on something, as it is in your consciousness, you are also helping to create it. Now, that can alarm some of you, for you immediately worry about the thoughts that you have that are not so light and bright. And do not worry, that just makes you part of the human collective circa 2020. Do not waste time worrying about what you are not good at, for that will not serve you. That is an old human game that many of you have grown out of by now. Instead, focus on where you can find the light and the spirit on the planet, or where you can cultivate or grow or shape or create the light and the spirit on the planet. For especially at a time where there are those who would rather you didn't focus on the light and the spirit and your connectivity, it is more important than ever that you let yourself rise through this time. For here is the interesting thing. Even though many of you have been, shall we say, restricted in your movements, in your ability to connect with each other in some of the old ways, from our vantage point looking down on the earth at this time, what we are seeing is an enormous power growing inside all of these individual houses and buildings. An enormous power. For the slowing down and the stopping is actually allowing your souls to regenerate and generate. So you are regenerating and healing, a little like a cleanse or a healing diet can help your body repair its cells. You are, through the stopping this year, regenerating the old parts of you that perhaps had not had time to transform, but you are also generating the new inside you. Even those of you who feel you are stuck, even those of you who feel in your minds you are not moving forward the way you want to, you are not getting the visions you want, the only reason you would even have those thoughts is because those visions and desires are in you. What you are experiencing is a lock in your mind. You perceive it that you are doing something wrong, but the very fact you're even wanting those things shows those things are in you. What you are now navigating is allowing those things to fully become inside you. And there is a part of your mind that has a wounded history that does not want to let go of that wound, or does not know how to let go of that wound. So it is in a fight. It is not letting the new in because it wants to talk to you about the old over and over again. Nothing wrong with this. Again, no judgment here. We are just saying this is an example of how the old is leaving you, and how many of you are having strange memories and daydreams and all kinds of experiences that seem a little random to you, even those of you who are, or what we would call, the spiritual or self-growth veterans of this group. You, more than any, are a little shocked by some of the thoughts you have had, some of the feelings that you have had. That is the evidence that the consciousness is changing fast. Otherwise, you would not be. So do not worry about the old identities that you are leaving behind, the old aspects, the old memories. They need to be transmuted to create the space to allow the light into you for what you create next. And again, please do not listen to us with your human minds. For if you listen to us with your human minds, you will start thinking about an action plan, or what you need to get done by February, or what you might need to do. By all means, after we have finished speaking, sit there with a pen and paper and write a few things out, because that can be very good. It starts to create the architecture. It starts to move the energy. But in this moment, we are speaking to you as souls. You came here for now. You came here for now. You came here for now. Now, if you begin your day from that vantage point, if you look at your life from that vantage point, if that has you scratching your head going, what? How does that make any sense? Then the truth of who you are becoming and what you are going to do next simply hasn't revealed itself yet, and that is okay. One of the things that we notice in this group, and you are a high vibration group, so this is in many ways a compliment to you, for Many of you experience your connection to awareness at higher levels than many on the planet. But what we notice is the restlessness of doing that many of you are still caught in, and there is nothing wrong with that. Your planet has been designed on doing. Being has always been secondary. But notice how you have struggled a little to find your equilibrium with being, as the rest of the world has slowed down, stopped, changed. And it is not just because you yourself cannot redirect yourself. What you are feeling is the mass confusion of the collective. So, it is very important to harness what you are here to create, to think about what you are here to create. So, after this broadcast ends, you would do very well to write down 3 things you would like to create in 2021. 3 things you would like to create. As Lee often likes to say, this could be a person, a place, a thing. It could be states of being. What 3 things would you like to create? And by the way, you can't get this wrong. You might write 3 different things tomorrow. The reason you are doing it is you are aligning yourself with that visionary, creative life force inside you that is going to be very needed. For as your world goes through the next few years, the amount of space that will be left for the new, as so many of the things that you used to know have changed or are no longer possible in the way they were, all of that creative life force energy is going to need to go somewhere new, to redesign itself, to reinvent itself. So what would you like to create for yourself? What would you like to create for the world? And if you are one who thinks you are blocked creatively, or you do not know how to create things, start small. Take a pen and challenge yourself to put the timer on for 2 minutes, and in 2 minutes you're going to draw a drawing. You might protest and say, I can't draw. We say that's not true. Put the timer on, do the drawing for 2 minutes. There you go, you created something. But I don't like it. That's different. That's your mind reflecting. That's your mind getting involved. That's your mind getting in the way. Children don't care about how well graded their drawing is or how well graded their dancing is when they are young. They are expressing. And that, dear humans, is what you are bringing back into your life. The freedom of expression and the channel and vessel of expression that you are. For if you don't, if you only repeat what you see at the current level of consciousness on the planet, you do not birth the new. And remember, you may be someone who is saying, well, I am in my late 70s. What can I possibly create at this point? I'm tired. I don't feel like I want to create anymore. You are a wisdom keeper if you are that age. So now you create through your energy and your words. One sentence you may say to someone you love will infuse them, and then they will create. You do not always have to be a builder on the earth to be creating. There are many who are quietly meditating, shifting the vibration of the area they live in. So creation is an act of expression, but one that comes from inside. You are not expressing so that others talk to you about what it is you have expressed, although that may be a pleasant byproduct and make you feel connected, and that's a good thing. You are expressing because you are compelled to express. And so many of you have been trained out of that truth and asked to focus on the value judgment of your expression, how the world receives or doesn't your expression. And so slowly you shut those channels down inside yourself. Well, the good news is creativity will be on steroids in many ways in 2021. And again, it may mean that you are birthing and gestating rather than building a castle in your neighborhood. The castle may be built in 2027 after 6 years of a slow burn with what you're doing. As Lee often likes to pose, if you knew you only had 2 or 3 weeks left on Earth, What would you feel compelled to do in the coming weeks? And then do that thing a little more than you would have if you had not given yourself this idea that your time is limited and your time is precious. So too is your expression on this earth. And you are needed. And now is the time you are needed. Now even more so than 3 years ago. Your love, your spirit, your connection to consciousness. Now, if you are exhausted, depleted, burnt out, good. Take 2021 as an inner year. Dedicate yourself for as many months of that year as feels right to your own inward growth. That will be a wonderful thing for you. It will allow you to deepen. It will be fertile soil for you as a creator in 2022 and beyond. It will allow your heart to open. And heart's opening is part of the thread of the coming few years. And that leads us to the final thing we would like to share with you today. Never before has community been more important on your planet. And we are not saying that because of the restrictions many of you are experiencing, although that reset of your restriction of being around your community and mingling with your community is actually creating a hunger and a reliance on the truth of how important you are to each other that would never have been felt in the hearts of the many. So there is an opportunity when you all return to each other of being more closely connected to the power of your group. But we are speaking to you about the psychic connections among you as a community, and that is a little different to how you often label the word psychic on this planet. Often the word psychic is given to a person who predicts things, the unseen. We are speaking about psychic energy, which all humans have. It is the part of you that senses. It is the part of you that feels. And when your third eye is more open and you are a little more used to receiving messages from the higher realms, your psychic energy is that part of you that catches your friend who is thinking about you. And the reason you know that they are thinking about you is because you start thinking about them. That's what we call the psychic phone call. Happens all the time. And you will speak to that friend and say, I was just thinking about you. And they, well, I was thinking about you too. So the psychic highways have become very strong. Even just this year, they have become stronger than they ever were before. So this means you will be doing a lot of soul resolution with souls from your life and other lifetimes. But it also means that your connection to each other is becoming more telepathic and more finely wired. So creative collaboration and community collaboration is becoming a little easier than it was even 2 or 3 years ago. Because hearts are becoming more aligned, consciousness is becoming more aligned, and people are freeing themselves of much of the human density that used to get in the way of deep soul cosmic connection between individuals and groups. So, wherever you can connect with community, do so. Whether it is in a gathering like this, where there are no physical bodies here, but there are many etheric bodies in conversation. Or whether it is with 1 or 2 individuals in your life. Whether it is with the plant and animal kingdom outside your window or inside your house. Community and psychic connection is stronger than ever, and for good reason. For the creativity of the future is going to be more communal than you have ever seen it. Yes, there will still be people who prefer to work alone or work in small groups. That will not go away. But your communal nature is going to be very apparent to you in this coming decade. And it is in fact going to be one of the gifts. And the energy of oneness that will allow and bring into your collective at new levels will be quite wonderful for those of you who have been custodians of oneness for many years. Again, as Lee said earlier, doesn't remove the challenges, the human issues or growth edges you may have to go through. But when you return to the connection of your soul, your creativity, the power of your heart, you will notice it is stronger than ever before, just as When Lee asked you to connect with 2025, many of you noticed how much more powerful your heart energy was. So, a pleasure to be with you for today, this powerful day and the day that begins a new energy wave on the earth, one that will last for the next 2 to 3 years. It does not necessarily mean it will be overtly seen or felt today, but this is the beginning of that energy coming in. And the speed at which your consciousness is rising on your planet is less dramatic and less destructive than it could have been. So be grateful for the time to transition that many of you are being given wherever you can. But as Lee would say, acknowledge your feelings too. It is okay to feel your grief, your loss, your anger, your upset. In fact, it is vital that you feel those things when they come up so that they do not stay stuck, so they do not remain in the basement of who you are. Many of you are transmuting emotions faster than ever before. So, good. A pleasure to be in conversation, etherically, via words, via Lee, and via all of your own souls and telepathic hearts. In peace and in love to all who walk the earth. It is time to remember. Okay. I think we're cooked, people. I think we are infused for the day, for the days. And yeah, let yourself be gentle if you can for the rest of today or the evening or whenever you're watching this. I wouldn't rush into anything too stressful, physical, or busy right now, unless if you didn't feel like you got anything from this broadcast, even be careful of that. The fact that you're still here at the end of 90 minutes probably means there's something in it for you, but be mindful that these things go in at different levels. The Z's have often said that frequency work, messages, it's the frequency that we're taking in. So we just took a good dose of the future. We just took I feel like we kind of took a 4 or 5 year dose of the future energy. So yeah, be good to yourself. Let it settle into your body. Drink lots of water, more than you normally would. It helps the cells to integrate. It sets an energy circuit running through you. It's good to drink so much that you're running to the bathroom all the time, because then you're releasing, and it kind of starts a physical energy current for you. So to those of you who are in our portal community, hello, good to see you, good to have you here. And to those of you who are joining us for Rebirth, we start on January 19th and it goes for 10 days, January 19th to the 29th. Rebirth 2021 is going to be a more channeled experience than prior years' rebirths. I felt like I needed to teach every class live, which I haven't normally done with Rebirth, and B, make sure that the Z's were involved in every single class. So some of it will be me, a lot of it will be the Z's. We'll have meditations to begin each broadcast from Wendy. Stephen will be teaching a special body integration Rebirth class. Marty will be adding some wonderful energy support videos to Rebirth this year. And Devor and I have already, for anyone who's already signed up, or when you sign up, you will find a channeled message and sound healing created by myself and Devor Bozique, including a song. So check it all out at rebirth2021.com. I deliberately wanted to do it a little later in January so that we could just let some of all the of like Christmas and New Year die down. And I wanted to be a little deeper into the year so that we could really start to cultivate and work with some of the energies and integrate what it is that we're going to need in our bodies as we move forward as these creator beings. So thank you for joining. Rebirth2021.com is where you will find all the details. I know Noah is going to send an email out to those of you on the broadcast too. Awakenalbum.com were the songs that we were playing at the beginning of the broadcast. Yep, you can hear all of that there. And thank you everyone for being here, and happy solstice. And I just want to acknowledge those of you who are struggling right now, or who are living alone, or you're just having a rough time. It's been a really intense year for everybody in different ways, but nobody has escaped. So I would just like to encourage you to connect with people however you can. Sometimes for me, that will be watching a YouTube video of someone that I really like, and I just feel a connection to their energy. Sometimes it will be Stephen, my husband, or the cats, or it might be a tree outside the window, or whatever it is, whatever it takes. Phone a friend, email someone. But if you don't feel ready to do any of that, please do yourself a favor and use the sentences I gave you at the beginning of this broadcast. Specifically, what does my soul want to tell me today? Just give yourself a 5-minute conversation with your soul every morning. Just 5 minutes, that's all. Then you can go back to whatever you were doing. But 5 minutes to just let those words come through, read what those words say, and let them calibrate you and bring you back to life if you've had a particularly deathly year. Grief and loss are energies that really put us in death energy, and there's been a lot of that flying around. So I send you lots of love if you're struggling, and if that's you right now. But I also want to remind you that we can, and I have, and many here have, we come through those periods, but we just need to put a few things in place to help us come through. So sending you love. Thank you to Noah and Marty and Wendy and all of the Lee Harris Energy team who are here and supported this broadcast, and thank you to you. Take care, guys. Lots of love.